The Vampire of Wingartentrieba by Art Gaines. Chapter 1. He travelled the highways of fairyland from one end to the other, most often wearing a great frown and a scowl, his brows deeply hooded over his smouldering eyes, which scanned incessantly this way and that in search of threats and foes. For despite its beauty and otherworldly charm, fairyland is full of evil and wicked things. Such was the general fury that darted from his gaze that many a fairy creature, plotting some vicious and cruel scheme, upon poking its head out of its hole to catch a glimpse of whomever was riding past, found itself filled with such terror at the violence the man's eyes promised that they darted back indoors and betook themselves to bed, vowing never again to plot mischief against the race of man. With his bare hands he had mangled the flesh of more fairies than could be counted, and he had launched many a goblin's skull right off its shoulders with a well-aimed kick from his booted feet, sending the head upward with a look of alarm and surprise plastered on its face as it rocketed through the air like a football. His face spoke without speaking. With every turn of his head, he cast forth a silent promise out into the world, and that promise was of implacable violence and vengeance brought down upon the wicked. Anyone who saw his craggy and scarred face, framed as it were by his mane of flaming red hair, knew that if they remained in his vicinity before too long, they would see blood and bone and bowels, and wicked things cease from the face of the earth. He had seen too much of the evils of the world, and he longed for home, for the tranquility of holy Suitor Larach in the northern reaches of fairy French Caledonia. But the world was still full of vicious and proud evils that practically called out to be butchered, and his hatred for these things fueled his quest. Thus came Sir Allan Daybore, with a stoic heart full of gigantic melancholies and not much mirth, to rid the world of pestilence, vampires, tanaquins, and unnatural beasts, whatever might be found that brought death and misery to the Christian peoples trapped in that otherworldly place. His true name was Sir Allan Daybore, and in most civilized places he went by that name, and it was by that name he had been knighted and received his commission from the Archbishop of Suitor Larach himself, like all the knights of his order, but mostly he was known by a simpler name that rolled more easily off the tongues of regular folk, who called him Sir Allan Daybore. He was a knight of the Michelin order, and as such he was answerable to no one but God above, the Archbishop, the Emperor, and the Code of Chivalry and of St. Michael. His cloak and shield were emblazoned with St. Michael's cross, and around his neck he wore a pendant of St. Joseph, close to his heart beneath several layers of chainmail, silk, cotton, and fur, which kept the last of winter's chill from his flesh. Now, the human inhabitants of fairyland are tall, but Sir Allan was considered gigantic, even by their standards. If you saw him, you might think he was a representative of that ancient race of red-headed gargantuans who once terrorized the ancient world and still sometimes emerge from their secret places into the deserts and wastelands of the world to hunt for human flesh, to satiate their beastly appetites. In truth, however, Sir Allan was of no relation to that species of giant, and if you saw him standing next to one, there could be no confusion over which was which. For although the Michelin knight was of savage visage, and was the sort of man who could kill and rejoice in the killing, there was an unmistakable nobility to his bearing that no slouching ancient cannibal could ever mimic. He was thoroughly human, incorrupted in his generations, his veins full of the hot red blood of Adam, and not a single drop from any fey or otherworldly creature. Something of Sir Allan's reputation had preceded him when he approached the farm on the outskirts of Wingartentrieba. They did not know his face, but they knew from the color of his cloak and the form of the cross on his equipment exactly what sort of knight he was and what could be rightly asked of him. He was one who could be trusted to commit violence on behalf of the innocent and right their wrongs or die trying. When they caught sight of him, they ran to him, urged on by the desperation of their plight, and regaled him with a tale of a lost daughter who had suffered terrible visions and nightmares for months, saying that she heard a dark, insistent voice speaking to her in the night, compelling her to come to him, whomever it was to whom this disembodied voice belonged, promising her love and riches and wine and all manner of delights. Rustic though they were, the farmer and his family had sensed that it was no mere nightmare, but the workings of some dark spirit. But whether it was some demon or night creature or the spells of some sorcerer, they could not tell. They had taken measures to protect her, ranging from bedecking her with talismans and other superstitious tokens to locking her in her chambers at night when the voices usually came. These precautions had been in vain, however, for only 4 days before Sir Allan's appearance, the family had been awoken in the middle of the night by the chill air of the winter night seeping into their home through a door left open to the outside world. Rushing outside, they had found the bare footprints of their daughter in the snow, reaching part way down the farmyard toward the road, until they suddenly vanished, as if she had been raptured by some great bird, the scene lit eerily by the bright fairy moon. The cloudless sky had been empty, though, showing no cloud or raptor. Sir Allan plied them with questions, but they were beside themselves with distress, unable to fathom what had occurred. As far as they could tell, their daughter had been pulled straight up into the air by some winged devil and carried somewhere, who can say? Sir Allan knew almost immediately what had most likely occurred. He had seen and heard of this sort of thing many, many times. He kept his peace for the moment, however, and listened to all the farmer and his family had to say, most of which was half-pagan superstition and hysterical nonsense. The farmer's wife thought her daughter had been carried off by fairies to be their fairy queen, and the girl's brother had quite cleverly deduced that goblin assassins had addled his sister's brain by putting drugs in her food, causing her to wander off. The father had obviously considered many possibilities, but thought the most likely was that his daughter had been lured away by a coven of witches, either to join their number or be sacrificed in some occult ritual. Sir Allan descended from his horse to listen to the man. He nodded encouragingly as the other spoke, trying to suss out the tidbits of sense in the man's ramblings. He put a massive hand on the man's shoulder to reassure him. When the Mickeleen had heard enough, he addressed the family altogether, as well as all the farmhands who had gathered round. What you are describing is something I have seen and heard of many times. I almost wish this was goblins or fairies. He turned to the father and continued, I will not say, I wish this was witches. I am glad for your daughter's sake that this does not smack of that. This is vampire work. Upon hearing this, the wife collapsed straightway to the ground, and the farmer put his hands to his head and nearly stumbled as his knees grew weak. I knew it, the brother exclaimed. Ignoring the outburst, Sir Allan continued, addressing the mother. Your daughter is alive. It's only been 4 days, as you say. The vampire will preserve her in his lair, wherever that may be, at least for a time. She survives, like a fly trapped in a spider's threads, as he slowly poisons her, mind, body, and bone. The mother began to wail upon hearing what her daughter was enduring. Sir Allan turned to the father. Hope still remains while the body draws breath. Have courage. But you must tell me, and that right quickly, are there any ruins here where a vampire might take up residence to hide from the sun, or mines or caves, or anything of that sort? The brother spoke up again. Yes, there's the ruin of an old stone house about 2 miles up the road. Sir Allan nodded and addressed the father again. Is it on your lands? Are there any people around it? Other homes or farmsteads? No, it's overgrown. All right. Anything else? Having recovered a bit of his composure, the father answered, Yes, there are many caves and dark ravines at the root of those mountains there. He pointed, and Sir Allan turned to look. Very well. Sir Allan drew his sword and held it aloft for all to see. You have my word as a Mickeleen that I shall return your daughter safe to you, and barring that this corner of God's good earth and fairyland will be cleansed of this deceiver that seeks to have his way with the obedient daughters and wives of good, honourable Christian men. Sir Allan unlatched his sword's furniture from his belt and sheathed the blade. Then, turning the sword to rest the flap tip of its sheath on the ground, he knelt and rested his hands on the pommel. Pray with me, he commanded. The family and all the farmhands followed his example and knelt upon the ground. Beginning in Latin, he praised the Creator for his mercies, and the gospel of Jesus Christ, and the power that the name of Jesus Christ carried over the fairy realms, to push back the chaos and wickedness of that place, making the days and nights to return to their irregular patterns, and restoring the celestial spheres to their proper proportions and paths. Still in Latin, he thanked the Lord for preserving so long ago the lives of so many Christians, despite the great upheaval that had subsumed the old world beneath the continents of fairyland. He thanked the Lord for the special dispensation he and the Michaelines and the Archbishop had been granted, the power to contend with demons and dragons and the foulest of night creatures. Finally, switching to the vulgar tongue, so the farmer and his people could understand, he besought the Lord to preserve the soul and body of the sweet Christian maid who had been stolen from her goodly, God-fearing parents. When Sir Allan stood, the peasants remained on their knees staring up at him, and Sir Allan had to beckon them to rise. He latched his sword and sheath back onto his belt as they rose. "I will depart now to search for your daughter," he told them, "but I will take a bit of bread and some milk, if you have any, to fortify me for the task." Immediately the brother and the mother rushed off to get the knight what he requested. The father straightened, and a resigned look came into his eyes. "I will accompany you," he announced. Sir Allan sighed. "No, good sir. This foe is beyond you, not unless you have experience battling foes that assail your soul and your spirit as much as your flesh. What is the greatest sort of night creature you've ever run up against? A goblin trashing your cellars, or perhaps a fairy fouling the garden? That seems to be all that the minds of your family turn to." The farmer hung his head. Sir Allan had the right of it. The knight continued, "I am sorry, my friend, but you would be more likely to endanger your daughter were you to second me. It was the hand of the Almighty that brought me here now in the hour of your need. God has brought me here to you. One of the endless mercies he bestows upon those who are called by his name and cast their hopes upon his Son." Sir Allan crossed himself and bowed his head for a moment in reverence to the name of God, and the farmer imitated the motion. A short while later, the brother appeared with a wooden pail full of milk and a wooden ladle. Taking them from the boy, Sir Allan filled the ladle and drank of the nourishing substance, savoring its warmth against the chill of the morning air. The sun was bright, but snow still lay upon the ground in hollows and under trees. When the mother brought him bread, he thanked her, tore off a large piece, and stuffed it into his mouth. The rest went into his pack. Remounting his horse, the knight saluted the farmer and his people, then informed them, "If I do not return within a fortnight, then know that I have most likely failed in my endeavor, but until then, do not let your hearts be darkened. Pray without ceasing for me and for the soul of your daughter. Have confidence in this, that he who began a good work in you will carry it through to completion until all the world and fairyland are brought under the dominion of his feet. Farewell."